Hi, this is Bobby Brown, and welcome to another fucking podcast.
You kids with your loud music and your Dan Fogelberg, your Zima, hula hoops, and Pac-Man video games, don't you see? People today have attention spans that can only be measured in nanoseconds.
See, son, old legends never die. They just lose weight.
Like a legend and an out-of-work bum with a lot of life.
Hello, you crazy dick fucker!
Party time!
Yes, it is party time. Hello, Hollywood. Hello, Hollywood. Hollywood. Oh, definitely shit. Not Hollywood. Hello, Hollywood. Hello, world. And hello, my loyal minions. It is good to see you, and it's always good to be seen. I am Izzy Presley, and this is Metal Edge Magazine's another fucking podcast. Got Tim Mosher from Junkyard coming up in just a second, but if you're watching this on YouTube, you see him already. Co-hosting this week, Paul is out of town and unavailable, so he gave the blessing for our good friend Mike Dawson from the Adam Carolla Show to sit in with me as the co-host. Welcome back, Mr. Dawson.
Always a pleasure, Izzy, to try and fill the great Paul's shoes. It's always difficult, but I love being here, man.
We heard the 10-bell salute at the top of the show. Of course, we know that happens every time a wrestler dies, so that is in honor of the great Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, which means usually we crack this for the working man, but this one we're cracking for the great, long-lost Mr. Wonderful.
I'm a step ahead of you. I already cracked one.
Yeah, you crack them off usually, so it's I'm used to that. So cheers. Got a beautiful Michelob Golden Light. Still got about 2.5 cases left over for my trip home. So
Izzy, the only person I know in the world who leaves the state of California to buy a beer.
Yeah.
And he always comes back with a lot of it.
Oh yeah. Well, I got to make that trip worthwhile. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. It's just science.
Make sure you guys hit up all the socials at Real Izzy Presley all the way across the board, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, the show page on Facebook is Another Effing Podcast. It will show up as Metal Edge Magazine's Another Effing Podcast. Why? Because this is officially Metal Edge Magazine's Another Effing Podcast. Just going to get a couple things out of the way really quick. You can catch us, myself, and Dawson with Dawson's band, our band, but it's Dawson's band, the Smoke and Kills. We are in Austin, Texas, next Friday night. That is the 23rd at the WTF
Ice House, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Ice House, 701 6th Street. Show starts at 7, free admission.
Nice. And would you like to announce the September release party?
Yeah, of course. We just had the pleasure of being invited to play at the world famous Mint on Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles. Love the Mint. I played there like 3 times. There's really, to me, no better rock club in Los Angeles. And we're going to be celebrating the release of the debut album, The Last Honky Tonk Hero, on September 8th at the Mint. And we'll be bringing with us special guest Angela Petrilli and the Players.
Angela's an amazing player.
It's going to be a great night of rock and roll. Mark your calendars for September 8th.
Exactly. So we got Tim Mosher from Junkyard, who is actually they got a couple gigs here this weekend, and I figure it's a good time to get Tim back on, and we can talk about those. We already got our tickets for the Viper Room on Saturday. I'm rather fucking stoked about that, playing in Huntington Beach. Have you guys done gigs now? Are these the first gigs back since the pandemic?
Huntington Beach will be the first gig since the pandemic. Ironically, it was the last gig before the pandemic. We played the Gallagher's, and then and then we shut down, and so the first one back is at the same place. So and the Viper was the one before that, I think, or something like that. We played a little run of shows in California with Danko Jones. Okay, and that was Viper, San Francisco, Brick by Brick in San Diego, and the last one was Gallagher's, and they were about to go gallivanting off to Europe. I mean, they had a whole big. Anyway, we know how that went, and so
right.
So this is our first stuff back. We've been, we did one of the Monsters of Rock streaming things, which was it was just cool. It was great to do. It was good to play, and then we kind of did an acoustic thing in my living room. but that's not like real. There's no people.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
we probably
It's
could have
one of
done
those.
more. We
It's
lost
one of
a little
those
steam.
situations where you're giving more than you get. And
It's
whereas
very-
when you're playing for a audience, for a wrapped audience at the Viper Room, it's a lot different because you get a lot more back. But you got to give. You got to give. So no
I
problem.
mean, I want to.
I hear you.
It was fun to play. It's always fun to play, but yeah, our audiences are pretty, I don't know, say interactive. It's
That's
like
a good
kind
word
of,
for it.
and we do lose us. There's a lot lost. I was always so worried, like how are we ever gonna get back and have that thing where everyone's, there was a point where, like, is this gonna happen? Is this ever gonna fucking happen?
Right.
And our audiences are probably closer to the behavior of a punk show than they are to your average, metal show, I would think, even though metal shows are pretty rowdy, but you know what I'm saying, like a
Right.
hair show or something. So we're used to our fans being a pretty rowdy bunch that are, heaving at the stage, and I like it like that. That's what we dig. And so, but we're excited to be back. I mean, we've been practicing, which was interesting too. Like there was, there's some rust to. It's a different animal, It's a different animal, and but we're glad to be back. So yeah, Viper on Saturday, and that's with Little Caesar, who are our old buddies from back in the day, and Gallagher's with Mono Deluxe, and then actually the Cruzados, a reformed version of the Cruzados, who were kind of I don't know if people know who they were. They were kind of a roots rock band coming up in that sort of era of the Georgia Satellites and things like that. And they actually did, they did some big tours and stuff. They had a couple minor hits and stuff like that, but it was just before the rock era, the big rock era of Hollywood. But they came out of they were the remnants of the Plugs, which was a big OG LA punk band in the Germs era. And then they morphed into the Cruzados, which got a record deal and they made a few albums, and they back to Bob Dylan. They did all kinds of interesting things. So they were a cool band. So this is one of their first shows back too. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, you guys had some stuff that you had to cancel, correct? You were actually supposed to play before this?
No, we were supposed to play over Labor Day, like a 4-day. We do fly-ins in general, and we had the anchor gig for reasons unbeknownst to me decided to pull us, and so once we lost that, we had to pull the rest because the economics, especially traveling over the summer, which has been an eye opener for everybody, I think, have made us more cautious about how much we extend ourselves, knowing that things are still sort of fluid. Anyway, look, we're going to reschedule the other shows. It looks like in December is what's being talked about. Okay. So it's probably all for the best, I guess. I was nervous about traveling that time. I mean, we have one fly-in we're doing in August or in the Midwest. So we're doing Green Bay on the 15th Sunday. That's my birthday. And that's actually already sold out. So that's a nice thing to see. And then Chicago the night before on the 14th. And we start in Minneapolis on the 13th. It's placed at the Hook and Ladder. So those will be our first, that's our usual kind of thing, a fly-in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, and then home. That's our first real foray into that. And, we'll see how it's going to be interesting because we always we operate in a pretty thin margin. We travel pretty punk. We don't bring anybody with us. And so things have to go well or it can be a problem. And then we're going to go out. I think once winter kicks in and things come back, there's a little bit more, things return to sort of more normal, and we're not fighting with people trying to have makeup gigs and all other stuff. There's space is an issue too. I think will be a lot easier. So we're going to go out in December and probably a couple of things in November. And I know we're going to San Francisco and Fresno in early September. So we're trying to stay in the car for a little bit and then see how that goes. If it's a van drive away, we're trying to keep it that for the time being, and then we'll get a little more aggressive as things start to shake out. This is also new. I mean, I see Faster and Chipper out there, and I got to give it to Tim. He had balls, man. He went out he took those dates and he did, and they're crushing it. I'm like, good on him, because I would have been nervous to commit that far out to that many shows, not knowing where things were going to be. So, I'm just glad it's going well. I go, it's fantastic. People are coming to shows, and we sold out in Green Bay 2 months before the show. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a lot of like, well, you know, but we're doing things, you know, the business model's changed. Like we're doing things like door deals. We've never done door deals, you know.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, the clubs are trying to get back on their feet. And so, you know, for people we've worked with before, you know, okay, you backed us, we got you this time. Let's make it happen, you know?
Right.
And so a bit of that, you know, kind of, you know, I'm glad they're still here so we have a place to play. So if we incur a little risk, they've incurred tons of risk over the last year. So, you know, and that's it. So we're back, you know, slowly, but, you know, we've got probably, 6 or 8 shows that are on the books. And we're doing Vegas too, which we actually can drive, doing Vegas on the 30th of July. Nice. So, and that's a one-off. We're just going to drive out and play and, you know, see if Phil Lewis will come out and hang out, you know, things like that.
Right. Do you
drive home?
Do you? I mean, were you around in the days of the bus tours or van tours and just, you know, driving across the country?
Yeah, I've done my share of that.
Do you miss that? Do you miss that at all?
I never had the big long slogs that, like, I mean, I think Pat has probably put in the most miles of anybody in the band, you know, from his various bands, and he was in every single yard tour. I guess David was too. Yeah. And they had the luxury version, and then they've had the current version. And you know, I enjoy it. I like once you get out and the weekends are the realist are what are feasible for us now because of careers and all the other bollocks. And what do you do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday a lot of the times. Now that's kind of changing, you know, because I saw Faster last night. Monday drew a ton of people. Not saying we're as big as Faster, but like I'd like to think on a Monday we could do enough to justify a couple rooms at the Squalidly Inn. But but I do like when you kind of just like, okay, we're out this amount of time, 2 weeks even, and you kind of get the bubble a little bit, and you just like, where am I? I'm here, and you don't know where you're going. You just do the thing every day. I like getting into that zone. You know, that is fun. You know, when you're in Europe, you do it anyway because you're taxed. Your time is so different and everything. You just, and half time no one understands what you're saying anyway. So you feel bubbled, you know what I mean? So and that's okay. England's true that way. I don't understand what they say. So, you know, but, you know, but you get bubbled easily when you're out in another country and everything. America, you always sort of, you know, you're in America. It all starts to look the same. So, but I do like getting out and being in the, you know, like the mob and your little group and the little, you know, the last gang in town element of it, like pulling in and all that. There's still some romance to that in me. Maybe I'm a fool, and maybe it's been a year and a half off that's made me feel that way. Because you asked me this probably at the end of the last one, I'd be like, oh fuck no, you know. So I move with the wind a little bit, you know what I mean? I'm a bit of a sail. So
Lori checking in from Australia says, good day all, and where the fuck is everybody else? I'm in this chat room by myself.
Hey.
But he also says you should hear the way Aussies talk when they talk fast.
That's a tough one.
I've heard it.
New Zealand's even tougher to me, actually. That one's tough too. The tough one is South African. That is supposed to be English, but man, that is a tough one to read for me.
Yeah, the only as far as those accents go, I learned the South African accent from watching Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah.
That's it. That's about it. That's a difficult one to get your hands around. Tim, you mentioned earlier about the luxury tours versus today's version.
Yeah.
Let's point out some of the big differences there. I want to feel the disparity.
Well, you know, we travel in a minivan most of the time, and it's just the 5 of us, and you never get, I mean, there's very rarely your own room. It's a lot of red eyes in to play the day of, just because that's the way our schedule. I mean, maybe some bands are less brutal on ourselves than others, and you know, but in a certain sense, it's okay because we kind of come from that punk rock background where you did it that way. It was always just you. Like, I mean, you know, and so everyone takes on a certain role and does a certain job. I drive. Todd does this, Pat does this. We all do our bits. Jimmy gets stoned, and you know, it's the standard.
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it, Tim.
And David sews on his colors the whole time. Well, you know, and then you're still driving. So yeah, it's
right.
That is the thing, you know, and I don't know. you know, that I think anyone could tell you that, you know, it's better to do it posh, but you were still lucky to do it. And that's sort of where we come down on that.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Nice. Good answer.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have him on. He's always got good answers. It's fucking Tim Mosher. God damn it. So the first time I had anybody from Junkyard on is when Todd and drummer
Ringo Muzingo, Pat.
Yes, Pat. Sorry, Pat. He's gonna punch me next time he sees me. They came in 2015 and they world premiered Faded. On this show. And then you guys have put out one album since then. Has there been any work over the pandemic on new music? Have you guys talked about it?
You know, we've actually worked a lot on that. You know, we were actually gearing up towards this year, whatever the year, the pandemic year was let's record an album, go out and support it all that year. So our plan was that after we'd finish these Danko shows, let's kind of go in and start on this album right away. Okay. And then it was like, well, we're not going to make an album that you can't support and have it sit there and who knows. Yeah. So we had some stuff written and we had started to write more. And then we said, well, let's go in and cut a single. I think that was an idea. Like how we did Faded. Like Faded came out as a standalone single and then it was included in the album. There wasn't any kind of plan like that for that. But I said, well, it seemed to work. And that's, we could do do vinyl, do a 7-inch and something kind of a little more old school like that. And we do a video. So we cut the single, which we did. I mean, I guess, you know, it was still like, we did it in a room, but so it was masks and all that stuff, you know, but we cut that. I don't remember when we cut that a few months ago, months back, you know, everything with us goes at a glacial pace. Yeah. And then we're like, oh, great. We'll just throw a single out. And then we're running up into there's no vinyl. You can't get it anywhere. Like getting it pressed is a nightmare. And so we're like, oh, I thought this thing would have been out 2 months ago. You know, label's like, we're on the list. We're trying to get it done. And so I hear we have the single, which is called for the song called Lifer. And we did cut a video or a film, you know, perform a video, which it's actually basically done. We did the final cuts are being approved. And so that'll come out in you know, with the single, and we'll have a 7-inch and there'll be a download and there's a B-side if you buy the 7-inch, and we'll probably sign them all and do all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but in the back of that, there's probably, I'd say 2/3 or a little bit more of the rest of the album is ready to go. So the single's got the song Lifer, and the B-side is a song called Last of a Dying Breed. And that kind of tells you what the vibe of the record is. That's what we're talking about, like this life a bit. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to get out over my skis about what we're really talking about, because some people might hear and go, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So I don't like to tell people what a song is about, or because I don't write most of the lyrics, so sometimes I have no idea what they're about. It's David's thing, so and that's good too. I think they are what they are, and that's always better. And though some of them are pretty straightforward. Songs like We Fuck Like We Fight. I mean, that's not terribly complicated. You don't have to be Bill Shakespeare to figure that one out. And so, yeah, we've been writing, and the new record's sounding great. I'm really happy. And we have Brian Baker's been writing with me a bit on it too, and he's submitted some stuff. And very cool. We did some stuff through the Intergoogles and all that. And, you know, so that's been nice as well. You know, it's nice having him around. He's always he's a super talent. And, he's OG. And so, you know, it's going to follow along the same path, and we're going to go in and hopefully bang it out sometime when we have a little bit of time in the fall. But, you know, Jimmy's going off to do some Hangman shows in Europe. And so, you know, in Junkyard World, things seem to take forever. So, yes, exactly. The short answer is yes, we have. We have a new single coming out. I hear the end of August is actually going to be the firm release. We're holding that date. It's going to happen. We might start taking pre-orders as soon as a week from now. Nice. And so it is kind of moving. We hope to have it out before we started these shows, but, you know, if we waited for this fucking vinyl to be ready, I mean, who knows what this is all about? You know, I mean, it's the supply chain in all parts of the world are all fukakta. There is a heavy vinyl shortage. And there is a vinyl shortage. There's a lacquer shortage. Yeah, and then pressing plants anyway. So our label has a pretty good relationship, and this is the best they can do with the guy and I think they've even gone to a couple of the ones they used to use, and, you know, so it's a thing. So we did keep sort of busy, you know, we tried to, you know, we're lucky that I have a studio-ish, and I can record, and we can get songs really far along. And usually when we like on High Water, we sung everything at my studio because David's more comfortable just me and him singing it, and it's because we're a lot of the songs on High Water a lot of them weren't played in the rehearsal room. We would just kind of do them, and so if we had an idea for a backing vocal, I'm standing right there, and we would just kind of wing it and do it like that, and so that kind of became our methodology, where it's no pressure about studio time because it's my place, and
right.
No one cares about my time.
Right. Ace Von Johnson just texted me, said he has been listening, and he says, cue the fart sound. He's like, but no, Ace, you don't get the fart sound. You get metal, dude, fucking metal. There you go. First half of the show brought to you by Beater Amplification. That's 2E's BeaterAmplification.com. 100 watts of testicular fortitude. Yeah. 3 channels, hand wired, hand built. These things are fucking amazing. Pull 2 tubes. You got yourself a 50. Oh, so great. Hit them up, beateramplification.com. That's 2 E's. Hit them up on Facebook as well. It's Beater Amplification. And our good friends over at Mackie. You want to get into home recording, you want to get into podcasting, hit up Mackie. Check out the studio bundles, a very affordable way to do it. It's about $500 to give you every single thing you need. And they tell you how to use it. That's even the best part. That's Mackie, Mackie. And on behalf of Dawson, a shout out to Rode Microphones. Why don't you tell us about Rode Microphones?
Rode Microphones makes the greatest microphones in the world. When the Neumann company collapsed in the late 1980s, some dude in Australia hired all their engineers and said, we need you to build those microphones for 1/10 of the cost. And they did it. Everything I record, I use Rode.
There you go. You were talking about recording, Tim.
Yeah.
And you said that a lot of times you guys don't even get in the same room and fucking jam them out. Do you miss that? How does writing and recording, work with Junkyard? Is it just somebody comes up with an idea, then you guys send it to each other and then, oh, that's cool? Or do you guys just get in do you like to get in a room and sweat it out and write songs?
Well, I think the German too of the idea usually comes from one member who has an idea for a song. And that can be, like let's say Faded, that was a riff that Brian sent to me from an iPhone thing he did in his dressing room on tour. So he's like, hey, and he would send me batches of riffs and I would say, oh, that's interesting. And I'd build some music off that. And then maybe I'd send it to David and he said, I think I have a lyric for that. And he'd come in and that process could go along for a while. Like, we don't have the chorus yet. Let's try this. And so it really varies, but some songs you can sort of tell, like, it's not going to get there till we all get in the room and make the racket, because there's certain things that a band bring in terms of just feel and like ideas you might have, you just can't, you can spend all your time in the world trying to execute them in the box. Mm-hmm. But if you just went in for a couple hours with the real live guys and just made, even played that section, you could say, okay, this will work or it won't work. And then we could go in and cut it officially. So it really depends. Sometimes the demo just works out great and it is what it is. But a lot of times, and we're not like particular about it has to be done this way. Sometimes we keep a guitar track from the demo and then we'll play drums to it. And sometimes we'll go the other way around, or sometimes the vocal stays. We're like, we just like this vocal. We got to build underneath it. I don't want him to have to re-sing it. Yeah. So we don't have any hard and fast rules about recording. And sometimes we're recording as we're doing it. Sometimes it is the vocal take that he's doing just to get the lyrics together because it's spontaneous. It just happens. And I'm like, oh, that's good. And sometimes we have to circle back a half dozen times.
Do you think that go ahead.
So we don't really have hard and fast rules about it. And we're always kind of looking for ideas. Todd comes up with ideas. Obviously, Brian comes up. Sometimes David has songs in his head, but he doesn't play an instrument. And we'll sit down and sing me the song, and I'll kind of ham around until I find where he's going with it, and we'll kind of build out of that too. So there's all kinds of different ways it happens.
Well, that seems to me that that's intrinsically punk rock.
I guess so, yeah.
I don't think in the production process there's anything more punk rock than using a demoed lyric in the final take.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not real hung up. I'm looking for like excitement and energy and something that connects with me when I hear it. Like it moves me, and I'm still like, because I started as a Junkyard fan, so I sort of try to have that sort of that ear. Like that's exciting to me, Because sometimes David doesn't know what's great about him, I think I do. Maybe that's my job, is to say, no, that's cool. I love that about that. Because, everyone's insecure about their art. That's just the nature of it. So, You know, and it's a different kind of way. Like every other band I'd ever really been in, my previous 2 record deals, I just wrote the songs, and I'd show up and go. I mean, there's some, you know, but in essence, it was my vision, and I wrote them, and I came in, and here's the lyrics, and here's the song, here's how it go. And that was pre-demo world. I'd sit with a guitar, you know, in my lap and show everyone the chords, and we'd bang it out. That's the way it was back then. But I was the chief songwriter. Junkyard's not like that. It is it's everyone contributes to the overall, to the songwriting and of course the sound, but there are people who are throwing in bits. Now the principal guys these days are me and David and Brian, and principally David is the lyricist, but even that is fungible. I've written some lyrics, some, you know, we don't really get into too many of the fine roles, like as long as it gets there, like is it good? However it gets there doesn't really fucking matter to me. Just do we get it there? You know? Right.
You mentioned Brian Baker, he's not in the band, correct?
No.
Or is he? Okay, because I always thought there was this thing where, and if people don't know, I'm talking about Brian Baker from the glory days of Junkyard, and he was in a you know, famous punk band called Minor Threat. And I guess I always thought that maybe it was like, sometimes he would be back to play shows and sometimes not, and yada yada yada.
I mean, there was a lot of this new, like the album happened a lot, basically because of the energy that Brian coming back brought. And what happened was we did a bunch of stuff in, say, let's say the early 2000s. I said before, I'm shitty with dates. And that was with Chris and me, the other original guitar player. And we had done a tour of Europe. And like I talk about, sometimes they're a bitch, you know, and he was like, I'm out. He just didn't want to do it anymore. He thought the travel was too hard and he wanted to do something different. You know, he was newly married and wanted to do that. And that's, you know, obviously he could do what he likes. So he kind of went off and did his own thing. And he's been, you know, seems very happy. And at that time, we kind of like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. And Brian kind of was staying. He used to come and do Bad Religion albums. And instead of staying in a hotel, because he lives on the East Coast, he would just stay at my house. And so we would spend, you know how long it takes to make an album. He'd be in my house 3 fucking months. You know what I mean? And just, you know, I had a good spare bedroom, and we would just sit around. And you know, after watching, I don't know, whatever rock documentary we were into at the time for the 6,000th time, we say like, maybe we should think about doing a Junkyard show. And then we would start to schedule shows when he'd be around. With doing a Bad Religion activity. And there was always seemed to be something every 6 months or something. He needed to be in town for a longer period where we could rehearse a few times and go out and play. And we could give enough advance because he knew when he'd be there. And so we would do the whiskey and things like that. And then the record kind of came out of that. We did Faded, and like, oh, well, this is pretty cool. Like we kind of had someone approach us about doing an album, and we did Faded as kind of like almost like a tester. And we were all kind of surprised how well received it was. I mean, I think it's a good song, but you know, we've been out of that part of the world for a long time. And so we didn't know what kind of impact it was going to have, or, you know, if anyone was even going to notice. And it had a pretty big impact. I mean, we got Coolest Song in the World eventually on Little Steven's Underground Garage, that song. And that kind of moved into the record, and we signed with Acetate. And Brian was there during all that in the writing of that record. And, you know, he'd come in town, we'd have writing sessions, and then he would play where he was, and we would use some of that. And then when it came real time to like, well, we got to go out and tour, you know, our record company expects us to do 50 shows a year to support this fucking thing. And he's like, well, I'm in Bad Religion, you know? So that's when it became like, it's not functional. We need a functional touring other guitar player. And we brought in Jimmy, who plays with the Hangman, but was in Rock City Angels before that. And, you know,
see, I thought you jumped in a DeLorean and hit 88 miles an hour and went back to the Revolutionary Civil War and found Jimmy James and then brought him back to the present.
Yeah, we did. We dug him out of this, you know, this antebellum museum, you know, and reanimated him. So he was on the losing side, so he was happy to get a fresh start. And no, he was, you know, he's been around. Just like, you know, it's the thing about Junkyard is we don't really, it's hard to find people who have enough of the common experiences to really understand what we're doing. And we don't really have the patience to like bring everyone up to speed about, you remember that time in 89, like it's nice to have people who were there, you know, and I was there, even if I wasn't in the band, I was there. And we go so far back, I wouldn't want to be dropped in the middle of us terribly much myself, you know. So he made a lot of sense, you know. He fit, you know, he was our Johnny Bravo. He fit the jacket, you know, and he fit the colors. And so it was kind of a pretty seamless thing. We brought him in as like, oh, we'll have a touring guy, and maybe Brian will come and do some. And then it just became, you know, it's hard to go out and do it. There's Jimmy James.
There's Jimmy James. If you're watching on the YouTube, you can see Jimmy James behind me right now. And that is after the War of 1812, I believe it was.
I think so, yeah.
Great player.
I didn't quite get the reference until I saw the picture.
Yeah. Great player. Great dude.
And so Brian is kind of an, you know, ad hoc member, but he's really as much in the creative element with me. That's the kind of part. And, you know, and he's a sounding board and all that other stuff, you know, but, you know, he has his own businesses to run. He's got you know, he still does other punk bands outside of this. He lives on the other side of the country, but we talk all the time and we talk about that. And, you know, and he was very involved in High Water, and he'll be involved in this one too, in some degree. It's always kind of like, as the schedule and our general feelings towards each other allow at that particular time, we come to some kind of rapprochement, you know. And
there you go.
And we get it where it needs to go.
There you go. Well, let's do this. Let's take a short 2-minute and 2-second break, and we'll come back. And for the first time since we have started doing the Gospel According to, we are going to do it live, because we have the amazing Mike Dawson live on the show with us. And of course, the subject this week will be the Gospel According to Junkyard. It is Metal Edge Magazine's another fucking podcast. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Don't you go changing.
Vinny Tortorich here. Hey man, if you're a fan of Izzy, you might be a fan of me too. I'm the guy that gets people to lose a lot of weight. I have something free for you guys. This is no clickbait. Just go to VinnyTortorich.com and there's a big banner. It's a free PDF, how to lose weight. It's an intro guide to NSNG at VinnyTortorich.com. Go check it out exclusively for anyone who listens to Izzy Presley. Thank you.
RockstarLeatherworks.com is your home for badass rock and roll gear. Featuring 100% handmade leather bands, watches, cuffs, bracelets, and more, Rockstar Leatherworks has something for everybody. Whether you are going to the show or you are in it, you can find something to fit your needs. Choose from a variety of designs or create your own masterpiece. Their bands and watches are second to none. They also ship internationally. Who needs a stage to be a rock star? Check out RockstarLeatherworks.com.
Hey ladies, Sass Pants Designs will take that band shirt that everyone has and make it your own in a flattering, sassy, and simple way. There are one-of-a-kind tank tops, halter tops, lace-up tees, and tube top dresses already in stock. Check out the online store at sasspantsrocks.com and like Sass Pants Designs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for special offers and custom orders. Use the code IZZY25 for 25% off of your entire order at sasspantsrocks.com. That's sasspantsrocks.com. Let Sass Pants make you the envy of the party.
Rockwood Saloon Authentic Apparel takes rock and roll fashion to a new level with their tees and tanks for men and women. They also make custom shirts, jackets, vests, pants, hoodies, beanies, and more. The Rockwood Graphics Department can design anything from your logo, t-shirt design, promo posters, band swag, and printed at great prices. From tour shirts and custom stage gear to killer threads for the street to the stage, Rockwood Saloon has it all. Rockwood Saloon, authentic rock and roll apparel for stage and street. World tour tested for quality, comfort, style, and durability. Check them out at www.rockwoodsaloon.com. That's rockwoodsaloon.com.
A reading from the Gospel of Junkyard. Book, Hands Off. For 3 days on end, she was in bed with my best friend, discussing every problem. She cried, she begged, David, we didn't really do anything. He's a really understanding guy, and he really just listens. And I said, baby, you gave him head. God damn. From the book of Junkyard.
Reads well. It reads really well.
Oh, it does.
Oh, you put yourself up there at the pulpit on the altar. You know, imagine the slick backed hair.
Yeah.
I was doing a little hop, shuffle, hop.
Yeah.
Couldn't really see it because it was in my head, but yeah, no, it fits.
It's, you know, it's all context, you know.
Second half of the show brought to you by AP Laser. That's aplaser.com. It's summertime. There's weddings. There's high school reunions happening, and I'm going to miss our high school reunion because we have a gig, and that's okay. On August, I think our reunion's on August 20th or something like that. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, we got a gig on the 21st.
Yeah, we have a gig on the 21st, and that's kind of an
We're
important
opening up for the Offspring acoustic at a private party. So
yeah.
Woo!
There's
Yeah.
that.
Fun.
Yeah, we kind of got to do that. So yeah,
That's kinda fun.
sorry, class of 1991, St. Cloud Cathedral. I will not be attending again this year. So yeah, hit up aplasers.com. I mean, they can laser engrave anything. I've even seen them laser engrave a hot dog bun. It can be done. aplasers.com. And our good friend John Palumbo over at John Palumbo Design. You have a band, you have a business, you need a website, you need a logo. Speaking of logos, John Palumbo, still waiting on the new Metal Edge magazine and other effing podcast logo, by the way, buddy. I know he'll get to it because he is John Palumbo. When you call him, go, hello, John Palumbo. Always call him by his full name. John Palumbo, johnpalumbodesign.com. The Junkyard Boys are listening. They just commented in the chat room, assuming it's probably Mr. Patrick. That would be my guess. He asked, what's the YouTube link? Well, that will come tomorrow when I post this to YouTube. So, yeah, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Any other questions?
And also, I forgot to say that we can attribute the success of Faded to the amazing interview and world premiere that was done right here on this show.
Right here.
Right here. But
we owe it all to you.
It's all my fault. What can I say? So Tim, you talked about bands that you were in before, because I don't know your history. I mean, I met you through the Junkyard world.
Yeah.
You know?
Most people do.
Yeah.
Through that world,
where did you, are you a LA kid? Did you grow up here?
No, I was one of those, you know, like the Welcome to the Jungle video. I came off the bus, you know, in 1986, you know, from Washington, D.C., you know, and was lucky I grew up, you know, when the whole punk scene was really happening there, but that had kind of petered out, and I wanted to actually try to make a living at it. And so me and some buddies, honestly, just moved out here, and, you know, we slept on floors and had no money, and we knew a couple people, you know, who ended up being people I'm still friends with after all these years. But you know, we got here, and there were a lot of expats, I call them, like the guys in Junkyard, and we all lived on the same part of East Hollywood, the shitty part of East Hollywood, you know, on Wilton down that way, and you know,
it's gritty. It's
and we imagine it then.
It's not good living. Yeah.
And the rents were cheap, and we had no money, and we had leaded fuel cars that we bought for $500, and I luckily got a job on Melrose working at a trendy shoe store, which was owned by Alan Jones, who owned Let It Rock, who also managed LA Guns. And so everything kind of ran through. There was a lot of the scene was happening through there. And, you know, we sold creepers and Chelsea boots. And so all day it would be Tammy and every other band and the guys and guns and whatever, but also celebrities like Bill Murray and Michael Jackson. It was such a, you know, it was heady. I was 21. And so I had a band with some guys, and I kind of fell apart, and I started another band, and we eventually got signed to Chrysalis in 1989. You know, I guess part of the whole thing, the big explosion, we were part of that. And
what was the band?
It was called Broken Glass.
Okay.
We were on Chrysalis, and it was kind of you know, it was an interesting band. We kind of were touching on things that now are pretty common, but, you know, we started as kind of your standard, you know, what was going on in Hollywood then, you know, and we started leaning a little into the country thing, a little bit more Neil Young, and a lot of Georgia Satellites, and then with a bit of AC/DC thrown in, you know, but we had pedal steel on, you know, our ballad had pedal steel on it, which was very weird. I mean, people thought
especially then.
Oh, it was bananas. I mean, there's actually a lot of country elements on our album, which, you know, in looking back, we made a first and a second album at the same time, which was a mistake because there's some straight ahead rock of that era kind of thing. And then I was really heavily into Graham Parsons and things like that. And obviously the Stones were huge. And I didn't have that kind of prototypical rock voice, the big growler thing. And so I kind of leaned in towards my Neil Young kind of thing. And so, we met the fate that many bands met then, but we came up, I mean, we were thinking the first two or three of the first guys I met when I got here were like Todd Muscat and David Roach and Chris Gates. And they took, Guns N' Roses gave Junkyard shows. Junkyard gave Broken Glass shows. So we were able to get exposed, or the Hangmen. I knew those guys really early. They used to come to our apartment and we would party and, because they had money. And all the bands were very tight. And they would give you gigs. And so this band was able to get pretty good gigs. And back then you could get exposure really fast. Like if you got a gig at Scream, which was the club, and people saw you could have a fan base overnight. So, we went from nobody, and then we got lucky because Dale, who ran the Scream, we were supposed to open for the Hangmen. And there was, that Scream, even at the smaller version would draw 400 or 500 people. The Hangman canceled and says, okay, I'm just going to bump you up to headliner. And we went from that to being all of a sudden record companies coming to every single show and being able to sell out our own shows on a Saturday night, which changed everything, Yeah. And then we were getting, I don't know, we had 7 record deal offers. I mean, it was nuts. So we got part of that whole frenzy, which was a lot of bands were getting that then.
Right.
Not all, though. Not all.
Right.
Everyone thought everyone got them. They were still kind of a thing to get. And so, Brian Baker was a DC guy. And so he was working on Melrose. And, the guys in Junkyard would come in and they were playing their demo. We'd play their demo in the store. I mean, that's what it was like. People would bring their demos in and then people would share them. Tracy would be in the back, storing his amps from the gig before in the shoe store, and it was, it was very that. And it was flyers and all these things you thought. And so Brian knew Chris from the punk rock days because Chris was in the Big Boys. And then that's how Brian got in Junkyard. They got rid of the guitar player when they signed to Geffen. And I said, and Brian was living with me on Wilton. And he ran into Gates at the 7-Eleven right there in Hollywood and Wilton, or in whatever, Kingsley or whatever the next one over is.
Yeah.
They bumped into each other there, and he was like, well, Dag Nasty just broke up, and Gates says, well, we need a guitar player. And so Brian was in Junkyard and signed to Geffen, and just how fast things happened back then.
Wow.
And so Brian and I had been, roommates on and off since forever, and so I got signed with that band. It ran its course. And that was sort of the beginning of me being involved in Junkyard. They were onto their 3rd album, and I don't know what the fuck I was doing. Probably back to delivering pizzas or whatever the fuck I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get...
World needs ditch diggers too, Denny.
Yeah, I've done a few. Yeah. And so we were writing songs for hopefully to get another deal. So we were still doing gigs and all that kind of stuff. And one of the songs that was a later Broken Glass song ended up being what was going to be the big ballad on the 3rd Junkyard album that got dropped, which is a song called Tried and True, which is on this. We reissued a bunch of those songs. The unreleased 3rd album finally came out a couple of years ago.
Nice.
And they brought me in to write then because they were needing songs for a 3rd album. And so I was brought in to write lyrics or maybe help with music. And they were doing a Broken Glass song on the album for sure. And that was it. There was even some talk about bringing me on as going to 3 guitars, but I could play a bit of keyboards and I could sing. So that was always, everyone's always looking for someone to sing background vocals. Tip to all you kids out there. You can sing background vocals, you get a gig a lot easier. And so I was involved even then. I was in the studio every day for what was supposed to be the 3rd album, writing, pitching in, doing whatever needed doing, or just, drinking their Geffen stock beer. And then they fell apart.
I hear David Geffen's stocked beer is the best beer.
Anyone paying for your beer is better than the beer you buy yourself. But then they fell apart, and I started another band. I wanted to go back to where I came from a bit, which was punk. But not hardcore, like punk, like Clash.
Yeah.
Pistols, like fun stuff. We wanted to have some fun, and so we cut all our hair off and started a punk band, and then I guess that became a thing too. This is before Green Day happened, but it was still burbling under. And so me and this guy, Mike, who's actually now in Bad Religion with Brian. See how small all this is?
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
he's the guitar player in Bad Religion. We started a band that got signed to MCA, and Pat from Junkyard was the drummer in that band. And so we went on to do this next thing, which now, and so Mike is now in Bad Religion. But between that, he went, after we got dropped from that band, he was in the Cult for 10 years. And then he joined Bad Religion. And then Pat went off and did his things. And then Junkyard kind of swung back together. And the bass player of that band is now in the London Choir Boys. So there you go.
Wow. I love the Choir Boys.
Gas from the London Choir Boys was in this band. The band was called Sucker Punch on MCA. And that was a pretty straight ahead, I don't know, they probably call it punk pop, but that word didn't exist to us. It was just a punk record. And then after that, I kind of, until Junkyard kind of geared up again, I didn't play in a band for a while. I mean, it seemed like a long time, but I got more involved in what I do now, which is writing music for TV. So.
And we are going to get into that, but I still want to get into these older stories too. So the one thing that I got from Pat and Todd was that you guys, Junkyard was really, like the guys in LA Guns, that they loved the east side of Hollywood, the Madame Wongs and stuff. They didn't really like the Strip, but the Strip was kind of a necessary evil type thing.
Well, it was a funny time because I remember arriving here and everyone was talking about this pay to play thing going on. And I didn't really understand what that was. And then I found out, like, we didn't have any money to pay to play. Like, it was just like, I mean, first of all, we don't have any friends because we just got here. We know the four of us and the guy from Junkyard, who was another destitute fool like the rest of us. I mean, we're all broke. Guys at Guns N' Roses were broke. I mean, everyone was skinned. So I don't know how they did it. I imagine, they kind of were the band that kind of bridged the gap, that were able to do a bit of that, but quickly became a headliner and also were able to play the East Hollywood stuff. But, there was a burgeoning underground scene, and that was happening in East Hollywood. Clubs like that were not even announced clubs, like Scream. Those weren't in fixed buildings even. They were moved. And White Trash and Go-Go and these places like that. And then there was a Club Lingerie's and Raji's. And Raji's was pretty more down and dirty. Club Lingerie was like you kind of were posh. But those weren't paid to play. So we started playing like Club Lingerie's at 1:30 in the morning, but we weren't paying to play. And I think Junkyard started the same way. And then you got lucky and got gigs. So we just never even thought about, I didn't play the Strip until Broken Glass got big enough that we could headline the Strip. And then they paid us. I mean, you pay me my guarantee, I'll show up to the opening of a bread factory. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And so I always wanted to, I always thought that it was just beyond us to do it. So we never really considered it. But it was a certain thing. I think the other thing was, like I was describing Broken Glass, like there were weird country elements in what we did. And originally the bass player for our band was a former member of the UK Subs, this guy Alvin Gibbs, who was actually really instrumental in us getting popular because he was sort of had notoriety. The UK Subs were still basically a pretty well-known band in 1988. They'd only left in 83 or 4. So, he was the one who kind of started the band with me. He came to me and said, you're a good songwriter. Let's do a band. I'm like, wow, guy from the UK Subs. How cool is this? But he's like, let's do something like this. Cause he was real tight with all the Hanoi guys, like real tight. And so he's like, I want to do a more rock and roll thing. Like, of course. And that's how, and then he left and joined Iggy Pop's band with Andy McCoy, that version of the band. And so that's when we got the final bass player. These stories really start to go off into
it's great.
It's a very intricate web.
It is. And so we just started doing it that way because it's the only way we knew how. And the thing about the bands on the Strip was they all sounded the fucking same.
Yeah.
And good, bad, or indifferent. If you like that sound, that's great. It just wasn't what we were going to do.
Right.
And you couldn't go in and be what we were and be successful. Even if we had sold 600 tickets, people weren't going to dig us. You were not going to be able to build a fan base that way. So we always thought, like, we got to build it the way you do it. Like, get people to see your band. And if it takes 5 people a gig to come back to the next one, then you're doing okay. And that's how we did it. And I think we all felt that way because all of our bands were pretty different, but you would still see a show there. I remember going to see Scream, and it was, X was the headliner, and then Jane's Addiction below them, and then the opener was Jet Boy. And you tell people that now, and they can't even believe Jane's Addiction and Jet Boy would be in the same area code, but that's the way it was back then. It was all mixed together, the goth and this kind of burgeoning glam goth thing. There was a lot of cross-pollination of that as well. The goth element was very big. Jane's had a lot of goth in them initially, and so all of these things were kind of just in this general stew. Guns N' Roses was very glammy at the beginning, but obviously had this punk thing too, and so there was always a mix. And then the Valley element of like Adler, and Navarro's a Valley kid, and there's a lot of that stuff too. So, and a lot of guys I knew were Valley kids, so there's a lot of that. Them coming over the hill trying to escape the Valley, which I guess was the thing you did, and so all that mixed in, and so you didn't have to be any one thing. And you didn't have to have the certain clothes or the certain things. I mean, I figured if I'm going to starve to death, I might as well starve to death on my own terms, and not theirs. And I figured it's going to do what it's going to do. And, I guess there was some proof in the pudding. I mean, I don't think we would have gotten a record deal going that way. And we got a record deal going the way we did. I mean, could have turned out better. I mean, yeah.
Well, let's be fair. People usually, when they're escaping the Valley, they're just coming over the hill to lose about 15 to 20 degrees.
There is that. Yes. Yeah. And it was a lot more like, it was a lot further away back then. I have to tell you, we used to be like 818, like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You know what I mean? Like, but we would joke, like, if you're going to go west of Crescent Heights, get your passport. You know what I mean? Like, we just were just like, we don't go where, we just stayed in this, we go downtown to go to a couple of the clubs that were downtown, but we principally stayed in this, like I always call like chitty chitty bang bang in reverse. Like there were no cops around. It just seemed like we were running around. The streets were sort of empty and kind of dangerous, but they were much more interested in dealing with the gangs or whatever they were fucking doing in the Daryl Gates area. Like, let these crazy kids in their 1960s cars driving around, going to these clubs that nobody in their right mind would want to go to, and just let them do it. And that's what we did. You never felt like you were ever being, there was going to be any kind of cops or any of that kind of like rules. So it was very free that way. I mean, was there danger involved in that? Well, hell yeah. But, we generally travel in packs just because that's our nature, and so we felt relatively safe. And yes, your car would break down all the time. And yes, whatever, you know what I mean? And your gear could get stolen. All those things could happen, but I guess it was exciting too. So, East Hollywood became our little shithole,
Right. Was there, I always, obviously you always hear the strip stories, you hear the East Hollywood stories. Was there a downtown scene?
There was initially. I mean, and downtown got scary. So, but originally there was big clubs downtown that would be in a couple different venues. Scream was downtown the big night because you couldn't get a space that big. That's how big Scream would draw on a Saturday night for the Winners of the Park Plaza, easily 1,000 to 2,000 people on a Saturday night.
Shit.
Wow.
And it was right on MacArthur Park, which was dodgy. It was like junkies all through the park.
Was dodgy?
Well, yeah. And it wasn't like there were things like, pay lots. You just put your car on the street and hope you came out and your battery hadn't been stolen, And so, but there would be 1,000 kids lined up to get into Scream on a Saturday night, no matter who the fuck was playing. And there'd be 3 different rooms and stages and all this stuff. And there were a couple more dance-oriented clubs like that. There was one called Power Tools that was really big. That was run by this guy, Matt Dyke, who eventually did Delicious Vinyl and discovered Tone Loc and that whole like hip-hop thing that came out at that same time. A lot of it came from a guy who ran a club called Power Tools, which was Friday night, and Scream was Saturday night. And then Scream would do one in Hollywood on Monday nights. And the Cat House was on Tuesday nights.
Yep.
And Wednesday night was, I think, White Trash A Go-Go or English Acid. And then Thursday night was like, there was always a thing.
Yeah.
So there were the bigger shows, there were bigger venues down in downtown, but you'd really just go to that. And then you get the fuck, and you hope your car made it back because it was like far. You know what I mean? Oh, I gotta get on the freeway. Shit, hope I don't break down on 8th and Olympic. So it was always a bit dodgy. So, but there were big ones like that. But people don't realize how big Scream was. Like, she ran the biggest club. She had the most influence. She was a de facto a kingmaker because if she gave you a spot on one of those shows, you had label interest instantly. And it happened for me. It happened for Junkyard. It happened for everybody. She puts you there. You got exposure. And she'd have these multi-band, like big event shows. Like she'd do July 4th down there. and she'd give everyone like 4 songs. But I'm not saying just like the Hangman, Junkyard, and Broken Glass were songs. It'd be Social Distortion, Jane's Addiction, LA Guns, early on Guns N' Roses, da 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 da. And it'd be these monster bills. People see the flyers now are like, that's not possible.
Right.
And you'd get all this exposure, especially if you're a band like that, because she wouldn't necessarily put Broken Glass first on. She'd go, okay, Social Distortion is going on second. You're going to go on 2 bands after Social, because she knew everyone's going to know Social Distortion, and they don't care. They're there to do it, and they get to play to a bunch of goth kids that don't get to see them very much. And it was just like that, and you would get a ton of exposure. And so she had a lot of power, and she had really good taste too. You know, people think Cat House was it, but Cat House is where you went when you weren't playing gigs, you know, because there were no bands at Cat House. That was
it was kind of the point.
Yeah, it was the point. You know, when they started having bands, it was like, oh, okay. But it was the same room as Scream. Scream would be Monday night in that same room.
Oh, really?
Then, oh, shit.
Yes. And then Tuesday
So that's how they managed to do these 1 night a week nightclubs.
It was a standing
They're in the same damn place.
They're in the same place. Yeah. And then, you know, White Trash was in the same place as, I forget, whatever. So, yeah, a lot of times it was shared spaces, just a total. And then they would do the goth club on the Thursday. And I forget who, one of the guys who ran Scream also ran a goth club. I mean, we went to everything.
Wow, that's just good business. That's smart.
Yeah. And so they were packing them in. I mean, they were packing them in. And, you know, Ricky Cat House got huge, but, you know, he built a lot of it on the model that Dale and Michael, who ran Scream, had sort of invented. That was the same DJ. He approached the DJ. You know, Joseph was a really influential DJ. That was the other thing. The guy playing at the club. I mean, he was the one who got Guns N' Roses their interest initially, because Izzy used to sell shit on Melrose to this guy who worked at the record store, you know, the vinyl shop down there. And he one day slipped him a early Guns N' Roses tape. But that guy had really cool records they import from England. So the guy from Geffen would come in and buy, like, do you have the new Depeche Mode that you can't get anywhere else, whatever the fuck it was, the new Flesh for Lulu.
Yeah.
And he came in one time and says, this guy Izzy, who comes in there all the time and sells me these Madonna bracelets, or the fuck it was, this is his band, and I think they're really good. And that was Zutat got that cassette from that guy. He was the DJ. So these influential people that kind of get lost in the history of things. You know, used to if they used to play your demo at Scream and even Cat House too, and it was like such a big deal because he had given you the stamp of approval that he would play one of your songs, even off a fucking cassette. He would do that, you know.
Right.
And so you heard Guns N' Roses way before there was a record. You know, you were hearing the demo versions of things like "Don't Cry" and everything. You know. And it was a rock club. All these are rock clubs. They weren't playing dance music. They're playing rock music. Scream was more goth heavy. So you heard, but both places you went, you heard a lot of the Cult, just different albums. You know what I mean? Cat House played electric, Scream played love. You know? Okay.
Well, it's just weird. And the reason, I mean, I'm sure you get this a lot. Like, you know, I grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I mean, this is fantasy land to me. This is like a movie to me. It's not real. It's like, this doesn't exist. That's why it's so great to hear these stories, you know, and hear all this stuff.
You know, I've been lucky to be around 2 things that kind of happened. I was a high school kid when Minor Threat and all that started to really happen, but I only saw it as a local kid. And, you know, I was playing in bands, but you know, Ian, the singer, went to the high school when I was still there, but he was older, and Brian was my year at a different high school. So I saw the DC punk scene happen, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Looking back now, it's considered to be this amazing thing. At the time, we didn't think anyone cared because it was a small little, I mean, DC wasn't a music town then. I mean, now it is because of what happened then, but at the time, it was like, we couldn't wait to get the fuck out of there because there's nothing happening here. Little did we know. Out here, I remember seeing Guns N' Roses the first time, and I had just gotten off the boat maybe a month before, and it was like a Halloween show at UCLA. And this is the lineup. The first band on was Stone Age Monsters. Second band on was Guns N' Roses. The third band on was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the headliner was the Dickies. And so and I went with my buddy, and he brought his new girl he met at junior college at LACC or something like that. Guns N' Roses come on, and I'd heard of them. They were already, I think they had just gotten signed, but they were notorious. Because I had a friend, David Scott, now Rossoff, who was good friends with Adler even back then. So he had a lot of insight into GNR world, and he was really one of the first people I met out here, and he's an LA kid. And he would tell me stories, you know, and I was like, what the fuck is with these guys? They were scary. And I was still really green. I was 21. And then they come out, and Assless Chaps, Izzy and then I just immediately see Izzy Stradlin and go, oh, everything's going to change. I just saw him and Duff, and I saw Axl, and I saw the way my buddy's chick was looking at Axl and Duff and Izzy, and like, not the way he was looking. She didn't look at him that way, my friend. And I said, and we both look at each other and like, we have to up our game. Like, we are, and everything I had brought, songs and everything, I binned everything and started over again.
Wow.
I said, I haven't written anything. I have nothing. I got nothing. You know what I mean? I better figure out what the fuck I'm going to do. Because I got, these guys they're way, 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 way ahead of me. And even then I could see that they were on some different level. I didn't think they'd be as big as the Rolling Stones or some shit, but I thought this is a band that could get out and be maybe beyond a club band. I mean, to me, a big band then was like, maybe it'll be as big as the Replacements, you know, like that was big to me. You know what I mean? Like, they can play theaters, you know, and, you know, I mean, which, hey, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's how much of a game changer band they were. And they changed everything when I saw that. And I started to see like, oh, this is going to happen. And then initially when the record came out, it didn't do much.
No,
it looked like Faster was going to be the one. And, you know, because I knew those guys because Todd was a good friend of mine and his brother was in the band. You know, they were all like, had record deals I didn't yet. And they'd sit around the store with us because the store, you know, Alan Jones would buy beer and pot at the store. And we'd sit in the back and drink and smoke pot and listen to Van Halen. Fair Warning, I think, seemed to be our winner at that time. Really, really, really loud in the store.
Well, of course. I mean, that's how you listen to Van Halen, really.
And, you know, so bands would hang out. And so we'd get to know these guys. And initially it was like, man, Faster came out of the gate a little bit faster. And so we were like, is it going to be faster? And then LA Guns came out, and Guns N' Roses took a bit, you know. But once again, ironically, the Cult, circling back, you know, Ian liked them and gave them that opening slot on the Electric tour.
That's right.
And that was a big fucking deal because the Cult were the band that everyone looked to in that era. They kind of, you know, dotted the I's and crossed the T's on all the genres that everyone was kind of touching on. Post-punk, goth. And then when they did Electric, that fucking AC/DC thing, that was really the game changer sonically about, oh, we can do this now? That was like a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
And so that really, to us, like, well, now it's really, you know, and they still had a long time after that, but that in particular, that they got the Cult tour and the other two bands, you know, it was like, okay, you know, and Ian's always had a pretty good fucking ear as well, you know?
Yeah.
I love LA Guns and I love Faster, but there was always something to me. I don't know. I just saw Izzy Stradlin, and I was like, "Oh my god, look at that fucking guy!"
He was the epitome of cool. I mean, why do you think I stole his first name?
He's a cool motherfucker. I mean, I hadn't seen a guy like that. I mean, I'd seen a few cool guys. I've seen plenty of cool guys, you know.
Yeah.
But he was a guy like going, "Oh, this is what it was like seeing Keith Richards in '66 or something like that." You look at this guy and go, "Fucking hair." He's got, you know, because we used to sit around and talk about hair and shit all the time. I mean, we were obsessed about that kind of nonsense because we were into it, you know. We were like, it was the whole thing. This wasn't like some like weekend hobby. Like, you know, we were in for a penny, in for a pound. Like, hair had to be this. You couldn't wear that. You have to do this. We had all these, what was cool and what was not cool, and we knew it, you know.
Looking back, would you take any of the coolness back? What you thought was cool back then? What that you thought was cool back then makes you cringe today?
Probably shit hanging from my jacket. I had a very brief
tassels.
I had a little bit of fringe might have entered into it. I have two things I think. I'm like, the unbuttoned shirt low was kind of getting a little ridiculous, but then I go, I wish I had my shirt off more in the 80s because I actually could back then. You know, I mean, that's my one regret. Like, I should have gone shirtless more. Right. At least I have something to regret, but I can have these great pictures, you know. I mean, of course there are things I regret, but we got pretty streamlined pretty quick, like long hair, black pants, Beetle boots, you know, the pants cuffed into cowboy boots. That never really flew with me, you know, and that went, you know, Duff pulled it off, but not many other people could, you know. Yeah. And we've seen people doing like nope, you ain't Duff. Don't try it. It's hard to do.
Nice.
And so that's a look that I don't think has held up well, like, but then I've seen pictures of Joe Perry with it. I'm like, God, it looks fucking great. I wish I could. Gotta have legs. Gotta have legs the size of like, little tiny little legs.
Yep.
Pencil legs. And he did, So, I mean, I'm sure the clothes aren't the things I regret from those days. I'll tell you that. So,
Jim checking in from the upper Midwest says, damn, I forgot about this. What's up, Tim and Izzy? And don't forget about Dawson here. Looking forward to Chicago and Green Bay.
Yeah.
Yep. So that should be cool. Before I know we do have to wrap up soon, but
hang on. Let me turn on a light. It's so fucking dark.
Oh, it's okay. All right. While he's turning, there he is.
Is the theme in there?
Yeah. Well, no, you were fine before, but that's all good. But before we go, I do want to get into what you are doing and how did you get into the TV world?
No, just bullshit. I bullshit my way in. I was, I was at loose ends and I was trying to figure out a way. I had written songs for other people, some, and I'd written a solo album with this guy, Fred, who was a singer for the B-52s, did a solo album that Steve Albini produced, and I wrote about half of that. And so I'd had some semi-success as an outside songwriter, but I saw that as being a very tough racket. Yeah. And I just, was looking at, the business model was like, well, commercials are just short little songs, and so are TV themes, and I'll just do short little songs. And that was the math. And at the time, there weren't a lot of signed or formally signed artists in that world. Now you can get whoever you want to do this. Yeah, but then you couldn't, and so I was lucky. And ironically, I was, I hadn't really gotten any work, and I was working in a moving company with Mike, who's now Bad Religion. There you go. And the drummer from Vintage Trouble was actually my boss. I was at Molly Malone's and ran into a guy who used to open for me, and he says, what are you doing? And I just said, I write music for commercials, which was was bullshit. And he says, I work at an ad agency. We need music. I love your songwriting. Would you write for us? And I got my first commercial, and that was it. And then that was the beginnings of it, the very beginnings of it. And then I started, I had a guy who I'd known from DC who was a producer in television coming up, and then he got his first show on a fledgling network called Oxygen, and he let me do the theme, and I got another one, and then he went in and got the job as the executive producer of the Craig Kilborn show, which became the Craig Ferguson show, and I wrote the theme song to that, and that kind of took me in a whole different level and direction, and so and that was pure luck. I had written it for another show that I didn't get, and Craig just heard it and said, I love it. I want this to be my theme, and I'm going to sing it. And I said, okay. And that's how that happened. And then, and I've still worked for him. I did a show from a year or so ago. We did a game show together called Celebrity Name Game. And that kind of brought me more into game shows. I do Press Your Luck on ABC, and I do Card Sharks.
Press Your Luck, No Whammies, Big Bucks, Stop.
Yeah, that's me.
That was the greatest game show
it's on
all time.
It'll be on tomorrow night at 8:00 on ABC. So tune in.
Oh my Lord.
And
No Whammies.
And so I started doing television, a lot of themes. I think I've done over 40 theme songs for TV shows. So, and then I still write. I'm doing a show for Oxygen again, ironically, all these years later. And I write for libraries. I write wherever there's the writing is. Yeah. So it just kind of is built over the years. I've done a lot of, no one wants to hear my IMDb list, least of all me. And, but I've been really lucky. And so I do it all the time. I'm writing today, actually. So
nice.
I write almost every single day.
Nice. And then I suppose, through that kept you busy through the pandemic.
I'm used to being in a little square box with a computer by myself doing that. So it wasn't like a big dramatic, social change for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So composers it's a kind of a lonely lot. That's just
you got a nice studio tan, Tim.
I do. I did start getting my ass out on the streets a bit more and taking a little better care of myself. But initially all I did was just sitting there and, worry about the fate of the world and myself and what's going to happen. Then I was like, well, here we are. And so, and now we're coming out of it and, and I'm still in that little box writing. So Nothing changed. All that wearing didn't do me any fucking good.
Right. Well, and then you're going to get out of that little Brock's Reading because on Friday you're in Huntington Beach. On Saturday,
yes,
fucking Viper Room. And obviously you're going to be in Green Bay, Chicago. You're going to be up in the Midwest. You're getting out on the road. And I'm going to extend the invite for when that new single is ready.
Yes.
If you guys want to come back, we'll just do it. We'll do it on the Zoom.
Yeah, we'll get you.
We'll premiere it right here again. Fuck
all
it.
Right.
Let's do it.
That's how the last one was a hit, right?
That's how let's keep our lucky streak going then. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I love it. And people want to find you online. Very easy. It's at Tim Mosher 10 on Twitter.
Yep. At Tim Mosher 10 at Twitter. Junkyard Blues for anything Junkyard. I'm on Facebook, of course. You can always track me down there. And Junkyard on all the other socials, and Junkyard Hollywood on Insta, and we'll be at Gallagher's on the 16th and the Viper on Saturday. Come on down. A real Hollywood evening. Everyone's probably waiting for this. I expect an early Rainbow start, and it's a 2-band bill, so everyone who still hasn't reset their clocks for late nights from pandemic, 9:30 Little Caesars on, 10:30 Junkyard on. So and no other bands, and my boy Britt's going to be DJing. So it's
fuck, I love Britt.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a good one. I think it's gonna be. You're gonna miss your high school reunion, but this will feel a bit like that. I think. You know,
I love it.
Rock guys. Yeah.
All right, Dawson. So that means it's gonna be an early night. We're starting at the Rainbow.
I love it.
We go to the Viper Room, so
we
are good there. Dawson, we want to find you at Dos Angeles, and of course, importantly, follow at the Smokin' Kills.
That's right, Smokin'. SMOKIN Kills. That's the band.
Yep.
Love that.
And it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
I got to hear it. I really dug it. I really dug it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Izzy sent me. I was like, oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Right up my alley.
Yeah. Fucking love it. Love it. You can
More
find
people
us
like you in this world.
Indeed.
You can find us. Well, let me hit the outro music here really quick. Scotty from Canada really quick. Says thank you. All was awesome to hear all the stories. All right, let me hit the outro music here. Oh, there it is right here. You can find Dawson and me in Nashville August 5th through the 8th, 6th through the 8th. Well, we'll be there on the 5th. Maybe we'll leave on the 9th. Why not? For the Rockin' Pod Expo, you can find us at the booth. The Metalheads Magazine, another podcast booth. And then you can see me do stand-up on the Sunday with Tom Jameson, Craig Gass, Courtney Cronin Dold, and of course the Talisman are doing. That's Philip, Jeremy, and Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
The Israeli band. They're doing stand-up for the very first time, and they're doing a little performance for us. Tickets are available for that. There is no guest list, folks, so don't even ask. And then you can catch me in Dawson with the rest of the band, The Smokin' Kills, next Friday night at the WTF Ice House in Austin, Texas. No cover, just come on down. And then September 8th here in Hollywood at
the Mint.
The Mint.
On Pico.
On Pico for the CD release party. Find me at Real Lizzie Presley all across the board, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, the show page is Another Effing Podcast. Paul Gargano should be back next week. Maybe with news, maybe with not. We will see. Until then, my name is Izzy Presley. On behalf of Mike Dawson and Tim Mosher of Junkyard, I say good day to you good folks.